Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're tackling a really debated topic, seed oils.
Yeah, it's definitely one that gets people talking. We've got a great mix of sources to look at, too.
We do. We have an article from the Cleveland Clinic, a Wikipedia entry specifically on seed oil misinformation, the American Heart Association's view.
And also a newsletter from Zoe Harcom, which offers a critical take on the pro-seed oil arguments.
Exactly. It's a real mix. You see so much online calling these oils toxic, linking them to, well, everything from acne and weight gain.
The really serious stuff, like cancer, infertility, the claims are quite strong.
They really are. But then, you have major health organizations presenting a much more, let's say, nuanced or moderate picture.
Right. So our mission today, I guess, is to unpack all of that, look at the different claims, understand the arguments on both sides.
And then really try to pull out the key insights, help everyone feel informed without, getting totally lost in the weeds.
Sounds like a plan. So where do we start?
Yeah.
What exactly are seed oils?
Good question. Let's get into the basics.
Well, the Cleveland Clinic source points out they sort of became popular late last century, really, as an alternative to partially hydrogenated oils.
Ah, the trans fats, right. Those became a big health concern.
Exactly. So seed oils stepped in. They're basically, plant-based cooking oils,
Uh-huh.
extracted from the seeds of different plants. Pretty straightforward, definition-wise.
And the list is quite familiar, isn't it? Both the clinic and Wikipedia mention what some critics call the hateful eight.
Right, the hateful, yeah, that includes things like canola or rapeseed oil, corn oil.
Cottonseed, grapeseed, soybean, sunflower, safflower, rice bran oil, too.
And peanut oil often gets lumped in there as well, depending on who you ask.
And these aren't just niche products, are they? They're incredibly widespread.
Oh, absolutely. In home cooking, for sure. Maybe use canola oil for baking muffins or frying something up.
But it goes way beyond that, doesn't it? Restaurants, fast food.
Definitely. Fried foods are almost always cooked in seed oils like canola. They're cheap, they have a neutral flavor, high smoke point sometimes.
And the processed food angle, that's what really gets me. Reading labels on things I thought were fine, like salad dressing or crackers.
That's a huge point the Cleveland Clinic makes. There are tons of processed and ultra-processed foods. Frozen dinners, chocolate.
Even stuff marketed as healthy, like whole grain crackers, protein shakes, those dressings and sauces we mentioned, it's everywhere.
It really is. Which brings us neatly to the core of the controversy. These claims of toxicity, particularly around omega-6 fats.
Right. Let's unpack that. The Cleveland Clinic and Zoe Harcum both talk about this. The big concern is that seed oils are high in omega-6 fatty acids, specifically linoleic acid.
And the thinking is, too much omega-6 can drive inflammation in the body. It throws off the balance with omega-3 fatty acids.
That balance, people talk about an ideal ratio, don't they? The clinic
Not-
mentions maybe 2-to-1 or even 1-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3.
Yeah, but the typical Western diet, it's way off. More like 10-to-1, sometimes even 20-to-1. A huge difference.
And we know chronic inflammation isn't good. The clinic links it to things like arthritis, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, stroke, type 2 diabetes. Quite a list.
It's a serious list, definitely. But we need to consider the other side here. The American Heart Association, for example, has a different perspective.
Okay, what's their take?
They emphasize that our bodies actually need some polyunsaturated fats, including omega-6s. They're important for, like, cholesterol regulation, overall heart health.
So it's not that omega-6 is inherently bad.
According to the AHA, no. They actually recommend getting at least 5 to 10% of our energy from omega-6s. They even suggest reducing it too much could be harmful.
Wow. Okay, so directly contradicting the avoid at all costs message you sometimes hear.
Pretty much. And they point to research suggesting omega-6s are linked to a lower risk of cardiovascular disease.
Interesting. Zoe Harcum's newsletter touches on this too, right? The epidemiological studies.
Yeah, she acknowledges those studies, the ones looking at large populations, often show positive associations, like better mortality, lower LDL cholesterol, with higher omega-6 intake.
But she raises a flag about causation, doesn't she?
Exactly. She used that analogy like TV ownership went up at the same time certain health issues did. Doesn't mean TVs caused the issues. Correlation isn't causation.
Right. So the problem might not be the seed oils in, say, a whole food context, but maybe their massive overuse in diets already heavy on processed foods.
That's a key argument, yeah. It might be the overall dietary pattern, not just the oil itself.
Okay. Let's shift gears a bit. Another huge concern is the processing. The Cleveland Clinic and Harcum both get into this.
Yes, the way these oils are typically made industrially, it often involves several steps. bleaching, refining, heating.
And sometimes chemical solvents like hexane.
Right, hexane is commonly used to extract the maximum amount of oil. And critics argue this whole process can strip out beneficial nutrients like vitamin E or phenols that might be in the original seeds.
And there's the worry about what might be added or left behind, too. Harcum mentions concerns raised by Nina Teicholz about the chemicals involved, even potential worker safety issues.
But the counter-argument, which you see from the clinic and is implied by the AHA stance, is that this refining is necessary
Necessary how?
to improve the taste, the color, make it shelf-stable. You get a consistent neutral product. And proponents insist no harmful chemical residues remain in the final oil.
And the FDA generally regards them as safe, the clinic notes. What about hexane specifically? That sounds concerning.
Yeah, it does. The Wikipedia entry mentions the EPA studied it back in the 80s. They looked at toxicity and concluded the levels used in food processing are safe, not causing nerve damage.
Okay. So established bodies seem generally okay with the refining process from a safety standpoint, even if critics dislike it.
That seems to be the divide, yes.
Now, what about heating these oils? That's another common worry.
Right. Because they're high in polyunsaturated fats, the concern is those double bonds are less stable when heated. They might oxidize and potentially create harmful compounds.
Zoe Harcum mentions a study that looked at repeatedly fried oil. Something about flow-mediated dilation.
Yes, a study linked to an oil manufacturer. It didn't find a difference in oxidative compounds measured indirectly via that dilation method.
But Harcum points out limitations, right?
She does. Small study, short duration, and flow-mediated dilation isn't a direct measure of oxidation products in the oil itself. Plus, the potential industry funding raises questions for some.
And she quotes someone, Guy Bensby, who suggests that bad taste from overheating is actually the taste of harmful oxidation products like peroxides and aldehydes.
Yeah, presenting a view that those breakdown products are indeed detrimental.
But then the Cleveland Clinic expert says the worst case is just a bad taste and losing some beneficial compounds.
Correct. So conflicting expert opinions even on the potential toxicity from heating in normal cooking scenarios.
It's complicated, and then there's the whole natural argument. Harcum discusses this too.
The idea that because they go through such extensive refinement, bleaching, deodorizing, sometimes solvent extraction, they're fundamentally unnatural compared to, say, eating the whole seed or a cold-pressed oil.
Like comparing cold-pressed olive oil to highly refined soybean oil.
Exactly. Proponents might say the refining is just creating a stable, useful cooking fat. Critics, as Harcum lays out, argue we're generally better off eating whole foods closer to their natural state. Eat the olive. Don't just mainline the refined oil.
That makes intuitive sense, which loops back to the processed food connection again.
Right. The Cleveland Clinic really emphasizes this. Often, the concern isn't just the seed oil, but the fact that it's a major ingredient in ultra-processed foods, which have their own strong links to poor health outcomes.
Like cardiometabolic problems, even mental health issues.
Yeah. So when you eat that kind of food, the seed oil is just one part of a package that often includes high sugar, high sodium, low fiber, other additives.
Yeah.
It's hard to isolate the oil's effect.
It really muddies the water trying to pinpoint the oil as the sole villain.
It does. It suggests focusing on reducing ultra-processed food intake might be more impactful than just swapping one refined oil for another, perhaps.
Let's quickly revisit that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Harcum makes a point that it's not just about inflammation, right?
Correct. She talks about its importance in prostaglandin pathways, which regulate a lot of things, and its role in wider metabolic and hormonal functioning.
And she brings up the evolutionary perspective, the idea that humans evolved on diets with roughly a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yes, contrasting that with today's Western diets, which are heavily skewed towards omega-6, partly due to the prevalence of certain seed oils like safflower, which she notes has an extremely high ratio.
And she mentions the conversion issue, too, how well our bodies turn the plant-based forms, ALA and linoleic acid, into the longer-chain versions like EPA, DHA, and arachidonic acid.
Right. Some people are apparently poor converters, and she notes that animal products provide those longer-chain forms directly. It adds another layer of complexity to relying solely on plant oils for those pathways.
Okay, so given all these concerns and counter-arguments, what about practical alternatives if people do want to reduce their intake?
Well, for home cooking, the Cleveland Clinic suggests options like extra virgin olive oil, especially for lower heat.
And maybe avocado oil for higher heat cooking.
Exactly. These tend to be higher in monounsaturated fats and are often less intensively processed, especially extra virgin olive oil.
And just using less oil overall seems like general advice, especially eating out.
Definitely. And the big picture advice, echoed in several sources, is really focusing the diet on whole, unprocessed foods. That's probably the most consistent theme for better health.
Before we wrap up, there's the nutritional value point Harcombe raises.
Ah, yes. Her argument is that despite being high in calories, these refined seed oils are relatively poor in nutrients. They lack the beneficial long-chain omega-3s, EPA, DHA, they lack arachidonic acid, protein, minerals, most vitamins.
Kind of empty calories in her view.
Essentially, yes. She questions the utility of the recommended oil intake from dietary guidelines when those calories could potentially come from more nutrient-dense whole foods instead.
Okay, so bringing this all together, it feels like the seed oil issue is really complex. It's tangled up with processing, dietary patterns, omega
It
ratios.
really is, and clearly tied into the whole ultra-processed food discussion. While there are definitely concerns raised about the processing, the omega-6 imbalance in typical diets painting all seed oils with the same toxic brush isn't fully supported across the board by the evidence we looked at.
The context seems crucial. A little bit used in home cooking within a whole foods diet is likely very different from getting a huge percentage of your calories from them via processed foods and fast food.
Precisely. Moderation and the overall quality of the diet seem key. Focusing on whole foods, maybe choosing less processed oils like olive or avocado for home use, and being mindful of hidden oils in packaged foods that looks like a sensible path based on this.
Which leads us to a final thought for everyone listening. Given these differing expert opinions and the evolving science on fats, where do you find reliable nutritional information? How do you personally sort through conflicting health advice to make choices that feel right for your long-term health? Perhaps it's worth reflecting on your own diet and maybe even exploring that omega-6 to omega-3 balance in the foods you eat regularly.